There's a war happening inside you right now, a battle between the version of yourself that knows what you're capable of and the version that's terrified of actually becoming it. You feel it in those quiet moments when everything goes still, and for a split second, you catch a glimpse of who you could be. Then, almost instantly, something pulls you back into the familiar shadows of limitation. The voice whispers something deadly. Who do you think you are to dream that big? Carl Jung understood this internal conflict better than anyone before him. He saw that most people aren't afraid of failure, they're afraid of what happens when they finally succeed. Success is threatening not just in the external world, but in the internal world too. It asks you to die to your old identity, to bury the version of yourself that was comfortable being small, relatable, average. You've wrapped your wounds in that limited identity like a security blanket. Not because you love being small, but because it's familiar, predictable, safe. You've made a home out of your limitations, turned your excuses into a fortress. So when a breakthrough comes knocking, when the path opens before you, you don't run toward it. You freeze, you sabotage, you find reasons to stay exactly where you are. Because to grow means to leave behind everything you've used to define yourself. It means you can no longer say, "I'm not ready," or "I've been through too much." To become who you're meant to be, you have to stop hiding behind what happened to you. Jung called this phenomenon the shadow, but not in the way most people understand it. The shadow isn't just your dark impulses or negative traits. Sometimes the shadow is your own brilliance, your own power, your own capacity for greatness. You've been taught to fear your light because somewhere deep inside you believe it will make you dangerous. Think about it. When did you first learn that being too bright, too confident, too successful was somehow wrong? Maybe it was when you spoke up as a child and were told to be quiet. Perhaps it was when you achieved something significant and were warned not to brag. Or maybe it was when you started growing and the people around you grew uncomfortable with your evolution. These experiences don't just hurt, they program you. They become silent rules written into your nervous system. Don't stand out, don't be too much, don't trust the joy because it always disappears. So you keep yourself small, not because you lack ambition, but because you've learned to associate greatness with pain. Your fear of success isn't about laziness or lack of ability. It's the terror of becoming someone you no longer recognize, someone you were always capable of becoming but never allowed. It's the fear of outgrowing the people and places that once felt like home. What Jung discovered was that most of your life is run by unconscious patterns, automatic responses that you think are conscious choices. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your self-sabotage isn't random, it's systematic, designed by a part of you that believes keeping you small keeps you safe. Every time you procrastinate on that important project, every time you start something and then abandon it just before completion, every time you choose the comfortable path over the challenging one, you're not being lazy. You're being protected by an internal system that has decided success is more dangerous than failure. Because failure is familiar, but success is uncharted territory. This protection system was created when you were young and vulnerable. It made sense then, when being different or standing out might have cost you love, acceptance, or safety. But now that same system is keeping you trapped in a life that's too small for who you've become. The most painful part is that you can feel your own greatness pressing against the walls of your self-imposed prison. You know there's more in you, more you could give, more you could become. But every time you move toward that more, the alarm bells start ringing in your nervous system. Jung believed that when you don't live up to your full capacity, when you deny your own potential for greatness, you don't just hurt yourself. You hurt the collective unconscious, the shared human experience that we're all part of. Your gifts aren't just for you, they're for the world that needs exactly what you have to offer. But you've convinced yourself that staying small is noble, that not wanting too much is virtuous. You've made mediocrity into a moral stance, telling yourself that ambitious people are selfish or that wanting more is greedy. This is just another way your unconscious protects you from the terror of actually trying. The truth is brutal. Every day you choose to stay smaller than you are, you're making a choice. Not a passive choice, not something that's happening to you, but an active decision to prioritize comfort over growth, familiarity over possibility. You're choosing the known pain of limitation over the unknown discomfort of expansion. And that choice has consequences, not just for your own fulfillment, but for everyone whose life could be touched by your gifts. The book you don't write, the business you don't start, the conversation you don't have, the risk you don't take. These aren't just personal losses, they're collective ones. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. The fear of success isn't really about external achievement. It's about internal transformation, about becoming someone who no longer fits into the story you've been telling about yourself. Success would mean you could no longer be the victim, the underdog, the one who's been held back by circumstances. You've built your identity around your limitations, your struggles, your reasons for not achieving what you want. These limitations have become so familiar that they feel like who you are. To succeed would mean killing that version of yourself, and even though that version is limiting you, it's still you. This is why healing can only take you so far. Healing implies fixing something broken, returning to a previous state. But what you need isn't healing. It's evolution, becoming something you've never been before. And evolution requires the death of what came before. The person you'd become if you achieved your deepest dreams might be unrecognizable to the people who know you now. They might say you've changed, that success went to your head, that you're not the same person they used to know. And they'd be right, because growth means leaving familiar versions of yourself behind. Your comfort zone isn't actually comfortable, it's just familiar. You've mistaken the known pain of limitation for safety, but staying small doesn't protect you from suffering. It just ensures that your suffering has no meaning, no purpose, no potential for growth. Jung wrote about individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, not what others expect you to be. This process requires separating from the collective, from the group think that keeps everyone safe and small. It means being willing to stand alone for a while, to be misunderstood, to be judged. Most people never complete this process because the price feels too high. It's easier to blend in, to stay at the level of the group, to never fully express what makes you unique. But this safety is an illusion, because the parts of you that don't get expressed don't disappear, they just go underground. They become depression, anxiety, restlessness, a sense that something is missing. You feel empty not because you lack something external, but because you're not expressing something internal. The remedy isn't to get more, it's to become more, to finally allow the fullness of who you are to exist in the world. Jung understood that every authentic transformation involves a kind of death and rebirth. The old self must die for the new self to emerge. This isn't metaphorical, it's a real psychological process that feels like loss, even when it's actually growth. When you finally decide to stop playing small, when you commit to becoming who you're capable of being, you enter what Jung called the dark night of the soul. Everything that once defined you begins to fall away. Your old coping mechanisms stop working, your familiar patterns feel foreign, even your problems change. This is the most dangerous time in any transformation because it feels like you're losing yourself. You're not who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. You're in between stories, and this in-between space is where most people turn back, not because they lack courage, but because they mistake the discomfort of growth for actual danger. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between real threat and the threat of becoming more than you've ever been. Love can feel unsafe if you've only known attachment through struggle. Peace can feel boring if chaos is all you've ever known. Success can feel wrong if you were raised to believe you had to earn your worth through suffering. What really terrifies you about success isn't the external trappings, it's the internal responsibility. When you finally step into your power, you can no longer blame your circumstances, your past, or other people for the state of your life. You become responsible not just for your actions, but for your reactions, your choices, your results. This responsibility is heavy because it means you could have changed things sooner. It means that some of the pain you've experienced was optional, chosen unconsciously, but chosen nonetheless. It means that you've been more powerful than you wanted to admit, because admitting your power means owning your responsibility. Jung believed that consciousness comes with a price. The more aware you become of your own capacity for choice, the less you can pretend that you're a victim of circumstances. You start to see how many of your limitations were self-imposed, how many of your problems were actually solutions to deeper problems you didn't want to face. With great consciousness comes great responsibility, and most people aren't ready for that weight. It's easier to stay unconscious, to let life happen to you, rather than taking the reins and directing your own experience. But the cost of unconsciousness is a life unlived, a song unsung, a story never told. Your fear of success isn't just personal, it's collective. You're carrying not just your own limiting beliefs, but the limiting beliefs of your family, your culture, your ancestors. For generations, your bloodline may have believed that safety comes from staying small, that standing out is dangerous, that too much success brings too much scrutiny. These beliefs are passed down not through words but through energy, through the unconscious patterns that get transmitted from parent to child. You inherited not just your eye color and your height, but your relationship to power, to visibility, to achievement. And changing these patterns isn't just about healing yourself, it's about healing the entire lineage. When you choose to break free from these inherited limitations, you're not just changing your own life, you're changing the trajectory for everyone who comes after you. Your children, their children, the people whose lives you touch, they all benefit when you finally have the courage to become who you're meant to be. But this breaking free often feels like betrayal. You're not just changing yourself, you're challenging the entire system that raised you. People might say you've forgotten where you came from, that success has changed you. They're right, it has, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Jung's greatest contribution to understanding human psychology was his recognition that we must integrate all aspects of ourselves, including the parts we've been taught to reject. For most people, this means integrating their shadow, their darkness, their capacity for destruction. But for some, the challenge is integrating their light, their power, their capacity for creation. You may need to integrate the part of you that's ambitious, driven, uncompromising in the pursuit of excellence. The part that doesn't settle, doesn't make excuses, doesn't accept limitation as fate. This part of you exists, it's always existed, but you've kept it locked away because you were taught it was dangerous. Integration doesn't mean becoming someone else, it means becoming all of who you are. It means allowing the parts of yourself that have been dormant to finally wake up and express themselves. It means no longer fragmenting yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold your fullness. This process is uncomfortable because it requires you to hold opposites in tension. You can be both humble and ambitious, both grateful for what you have and hungry for more, both connected to your roots and willing to grow beyond them. The either-or thinking that keeps you trapped is false, a limitation of consciousness rather than a truth about reality. Real power isn't about dominating others or accumulating external symbols of success. It's about the ability to be fully yourself, regardless of external circumstances. It's about speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes, making choices based on your values rather than your fears, creating something meaningful even when no one understands. This authentic power is what you're really afraid of because it can't be taken away from you. External success can disappear, achievements can be forgotten, but the power to be authentic, to live from your center, to express your gifts regardless of reception, that's permanent once you claim it. Jung called this process individuation, becoming undivided, whole, complete, not perfect, but integrated, not without flaws, but without the pretense of being something you're not fearless, but willing to act in spite of fear when the situation calls for it. The tragedy is that most people die with their authentic power still locked away, their gifts still unexpressed, their true selves still hidden behind masks of acceptability. They spend their entire lives being who they think they should be, instead of discovering who they actually are. What waits for you on the other side of your fear of success isn't just achievement, it's freedom. The freedom to be yourself without apology, to pursue what matters to you without permission, to fail spectacularly and get back up without shame. The freedom to be seen, really seen, not as the image you've crafted, but as the person you actually are. This freedom comes with a price, the loss of your familiar limitations, the death of your comfortable excuses, the end of your victim story. You can no longer blame others for your lack of fulfillment because you've taken responsibility for creating the life you want. You can no longer play small because you've tasted what it feels like to be full-sized. But the rewards of this freedom are immeasurable. You get to wake up each day and live from your truth instead of your conditioning. You get to make choices based on what serves your highest good rather than what keeps you safe. You get to contribute your unique gifts to the world instead of hiding them out of fear. Most importantly, you get to model for others what it looks like to live authentically. Your courage to be yourself gives others permission to do the same. Your willingness to succeed despite your fears shows them that it's possible. Your life becomes a beacon, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can continue to live from your fear of success, continuing to play small, continuing to deny your own capacity for greatness. Or you can make a different choice, the choice to finally become who you've always been, underneath the layers of conditioning and fear. This choice isn't dramatic or life-altering in an instant. It's quiet, internal, a simple decision to stop betraying yourself, to stop choosing comfort over truth, familiarity over growth, safety over authenticity, to start honoring the part of you that knows you're capable of more. The choice is to begin listening to the voice that calls you toward your highest expression instead of the voice that keeps you trapped in limitation. To trust that you can handle whatever comes with success, that you're strong enough to bear the weight of your own power, that you deserve to live a life that matches your capacity. Jung believed that we're all called to become ourselves fully, completely, without reservation. Not the self that others want us to be, not the self that feels safe or acceptable, but the self that emerges when we finally stop hiding. That self is waiting for you. Has always been waiting, will always be waiting until you finally say yes. If you learned something new or felt a shift in your thinking, hit that like button, subscribe to Psyche Survivalist for more deep dives into the mind, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.